Welcome. Today at PQR's IT Galaxy, we're able to interview David. David is a VP of VMware, and I wrote down some questions for him. So, welcome, David.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's been a good event so far.
Is it possible to explain what you do within the VMware?
Okay, so I'm actually the Vice President of Technical Services. So I look after the technical resources that go out with the sales guys from a pre-sales point of view, evangelizing the products, talking about the products, but also the guys who actually deliver the solutions. So
okay.
the consultants, the technical account managers, the education services team. I look after all those guys. There's probably about 250 of those guys across EMEA.
How long do you work for VMware?
I was lucky. I was in just over 5.5 years ago.
Oh, cool.
So when I joined,
so you saw it growing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a team of 20 people when I arrived. It's grown over a 5-year period. But yeah, the interesting thing is seeing the way the software's changed as well, going from just doing the straight conversations about memory ballooning and binary translation.
Live migration stuff. And
no one cares about that anymore. Now
correct,
everyone wants to talk about what can it do for the business. So it's cool.
How do you explain VMware's vision on desktops in 20 seconds to your spouse when you're having a nice conversation?
So I'm lucky because my spouse used to work for Amdale and made frames. But I suppose if I wanted to explain it to her in simple terms, I think the desktop's not about VDI. I mean, everyone's hung up on it being VDI. It's about people being disconnected from the devices. So it's people being able to access what they need from wherever they need, however they want to get to it. I think that's where the desktop needs to go.
And from the data center point of view? So 20 seconds data center?
From the data center point of view, I think it's about maximizing the assets that you've got. So liquefying the assets, building this pool of compute resources that you can use, you can add to, you can take from, being able to rapidly deploy applications across that, and being able to optimize how IT supports the business. What is
VMware's strengths? That should be really easy, but also the weaknesses of VMware.
So I think the strengths are the sort of heritage and history that we've got. So we've been running out there just doing virtualization for 11 years. We got to the point now where when Gartner's producing its first Magic Quadrant, it's putting us up on the top right. So it's the ability to execute, it's the completeness of vision. Weaknesses, one's a harder one. I can tell you
normally people don't want to talk about weaknesses, but in my role as a technology officer, it's also smart, and customers expect it as well, that there are weaknesses as well. So I can imagine some weaknesses, to be honest, from VMware, but that's my. I'm curious what yours are.
So the weaknesses I see if I think about looking at the way my team has to function. Typically, when you work for a software company, you have things that you have to avoid, areas where the software perhaps isn't as good as it could be. The problem with VMware is it does what it says on the box.
Challenge. Yeah.
And the challenge is to be able to go out there and be able to pitch that and talk to customers about that and not be arrogant when you do it. It's easy to be perceived as having a flippant answer to everything.
This morning in the keynote you mentioned the development team of Spring versus development team of the traditional VMware development team. Life cycle, different cycles, release cycles. The audience didn't saw the keynote, so can you explain what the differences are of Spring and the other?
So it's interesting when you bring two cultures together, like an open source development culture and a more I suppose a mature traditional software company. We started to see this clash in cultures, and the example that we saw was when we first brought Spring on board. We were talking to a guy called Adrian Collier, who's the CTO of Spring in EMEA. And our development cycle, we typically work to a 2-year development cycle, so we do a major release every 2 years, and we have a train development program, so there's actually a sequence of developments that have to be made, and we start locking down 7 or 8 months out before the final release. And then when we were speaking to Adrian said, well, we do 120 releases a year. We're running an open source community. How are we going to fit into that? So it's been great to see the two elements of the company come together and try and learn and adapt and operate in that way. It's been cool.
Well, PQR is value-added reseller. How do you see the cloud involve in a stack of vendor, distributor, especially in Europe, value-added reseller, customer, end user?
So I think the cloud will cause an evolution. I think the interesting thing is it could cause a separation from the vendor. It depends what type of cloud people are doing, I suppose. The private cloud, yeah, they're going to have that closeness to the vendor. Perhaps if people are looking to public clouds, the relationship then becomes a lot more with the provider and perhaps a lot more with the partner. It becomes like the classic example we talked about before with phones. Your relationship isn't so much with the people who make the phone, it's the people who provide the service.
Yeah.
So I think that's...
So it will change in various ways.
Yeah, it'll change in various ways. We also see evolutions as well. So we see partners now that are very focused on certain things. So there was a partner I met in the UK the other week called VirtuStream, and they focus just on providing an SAP cloud. That's all they do. So they've looked at what's difficult to do. And when you get to the last 20%, they've took that 20% first. So people have started to develop new business propositions. And I think you'll start seeing, I think the cloud introduces competition as well, where people might start saying, well, we're going to develop a high security cloud, we're going to develop a high availability cloud, we're going to focus on SMB. You know, you can see all these different markets that could potentially emerge.
Do you already see that evolution starting?
Yeah, you do see people now who are looking at the market and deciding where they're going to put their flag in the ground, what they're going to go for.
Nice. Can you give a sneak preview of VMworld Europe?
So I've got to be honest, I can't.
No problem.
I mean, I've spoke to a lot of our partners who are going to be there. A lot of our partners are making some announcements that are pretty interesting, but
that's how it works, right?
Have to rock up and buy the ticket, I'm afraid.
You're heading to VMworld as well?
Yeah, I'll be off next week, and then as soon as I land on Sunday I fly out to Denmark.
Cool.
So
nice. I won't make it.
You won't make it, no?
No.
Oh, bummer.
That's rule number 1 at home. My daughter's birthday is in the middle of VMworld, so that's how it works at home.
No, I'll be there.
So I will be at Synergy and TechEd as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it will be awesome. I think it's very interesting to see that. For instance, when you look at VMworld, the US, 17,000 people, the second largest conference in the world on IT.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
No, I mean, I don't think I definitely didn't expect when I joined the company. I never expected it would be the size it is.
When you look at VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, what do you see as the biggest challenges from a from an end user and partner perspective?
All right, so I think it comes down to two things really. It comes down to cost and security. They're the two things that people talk to me about all the time. So cost from typically
cost you mean that's a challenge to make it.
Yeah, make it financially viable. Why would it do it? Can you get it cheaper than actually having a physical desktop? And we've seen the price come down from circa $1,200 to circa $600. We're now seeing it drop even further. What we've had to do is look at how we work with the storage vendors, so how we access things like tiered storage, how we do things like...
because storage is a very
expensive option to go for, especially if you're... The advantage you get in a virtual desktop is given predominantly by some of the underlying storage technologies, the backup, the recovery, the high availability. Right. So we've tried to make steps in how we do that. We've looked at what we do with View Composer in 4.5 to actually reduce storage. And you're starting to see a lot of third-party companies coming in as well. People are looking to do dedupe-type technologies, Atlantis Computing, for example.
Good stuff, right?
Yeah. You know,
it is just a startup. That's the downside. But they created really cool stuff. I know them pretty well.
But that's what people are doing now. People are looking at how they can do that. And the security side, again, people are saying, well, you know, how are you going to guarantee your ring-fenced environment? What are you going to do about people doing boot storms, people doing logon storms, people doing virus scan storms? So we've had to work with partners to try and optimize how we do security on it as well. But we think we've actually got to the point now where security is
key.
better in a virtual world than it could be in a physical world.
How do you see the virtual desktop in the next 1 to 2 years? When you look at technology stack, you already mentioned that, integration, end user experience, TCO. What is the longer vision on that?
So I think the longer vision is, I don't know have you seen Project Horizon at all?
Yeah.
I think that's the longer vision. So for
explain
the people who don't know what Project Horizon is, this is where we're looking for. I've seen it described in different ways. I've seen it described as an app store for the desktop. But basically it's the ability to take all these different form factors that you need to access your applications, whether it be window, whether it be web, whether it be SaaS, whether it be a VDI session, whether it be a Citrix
or streamed
application even, Excuse me. To be able to take those and be able to provision those in the best way. Allow users potentially...
And best way, you mean single integration, single sign-on?
Yeah, that's always been a big challenge. That's why we acquired the TriCipher company. TriCipher is very much focused on what we can do to enable a single sign-on across that cloud, but to have it as a true single sign-on with proper integration. It's always been a challenge. Every time people go to a new system, they've got a new password. But that's where I see it going. People being able to pull all these applications together, just using the best means possible to get what they need, and then being able to present that in a single end-user environment.
Do you see user workspace management being involved in that area as well?
So I think that depends on the size of the implementation. But user workspace management, whether it's
user environment management, whatever.
Yeah. I think whether you're in a virtual world or a physical world, you need it. You get to a certain size, and you need to look at how you're managing that space. I was speaking last week to a company, and they were talking about what you do about managing configuration drift, because I think in a virtual world, depending on how you've implemented it and how you've locked it down, this is a world where things can drift. People can end up with more memory, bigger disks. People can start looking at how they provision those machines. So I think people are going to have to look holistically at the whole user management side. But like I said, I believe any big desktop environment needs it.
Yeah, that's what I see as well. And especially when it's a combination of different concepts, technologies.
Yeah.
They need an overview of that. Cool. Do you have specific questions?
For you?
Yeah.
So what do you get? If I know the value I get from you guys when I look at the papers you produce. But what do you get from an enjoyment point of view personally from putting those together? What end result do you got? Do you sit there with a favourite, thinking, I wonder which one's going to come out top? How does it work for you?
Yeah, depending on what kind of papers you've seen. What kind of papers did you see?
So I'm specifically talking about the comparative hypervisor papers were the ones that I was looking at.
Yeah. Within PQR we have a culture of sharing and spending quite some time on research and development,
right.
Investigating and also writing down and spreading the word of it. And actually, to be honest, that's technical marketing. Yeah, that's fine. It is die-hard technology, and we spend quite some time on investigating it.
Okay.
And the benefit is just visibility. It is knowledge of these solutions for PQR, so for tenders, for offerings, for consultancy jobs, and it is growth and continuity within the organization and people within the organization, as for example, as me as a person.
Right.
So it is visibility that's all about.
And what's the best bit for you? Is it the hypervisor side? Is it the desktop side? Is it
I think 4 years ago I started with a just small white paper called Application Virtualization Smackdown.
Right.
It was 4 years ago, and that white paper is released last week in version 3, and it's almost 60 pages of not only comparison features.
Okay.
But because that's really a technology kind of discussion. Yeah. It's about what is the application and desktop delivery strategy, and application virtualization is part of it. What is the strategy around application virtualization? What are the 10 vendors in the application virtualization space? And what are the key differentiators between these vendors? Okay. And that's just one example of this white paper.
Right.
And we did the same with VDI. So what is application and desktop delivery? What is VDI? What are the pros and cons? What is the strategy around VDI? What are the vendors? And what are the features of each vendor?
Okay.
And that is quite interesting to spend time on that. And I'm happy that I have a team with colleagues who spent time on that as well, because it's really time consuming.
We have some of our systems engineers carry the white papers around.
I know.
Actually give them out to customers.
So these are specific PQR white papers.
Yeah.
And Project VRC, Project Virtual Reality Check, is it's a research joint venture between Login and PQR.
Right.
Both value-added resellers, consultancy organizations in the Netherlands. We started in, I think, January 2009. And we started with investigating different hypervisors with desktop virtualization in mind. So remote desktop services, terminal services, VDI. And investigate what the best practices are. And as of yesterday, we released a new white paper. We released eight different white papers. And this last one is focusing pure on VDI, Windows 7, Windows XP. What are best practices? What are worst practices? What is the impact on I/O? On all kind of things. And
It was funny, I got a preview copy of it last night about 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And someone said, perhaps you can read it before tonight. I opened it up and it was like 50 pages.
Yeah, wow.